Right, well, thank you everybody for coming. I'm sure there'll be extra people coming in, but it is past. Thanks for coming. Today, I'm really lucky because one of the other practice growth experts has decided to take over and do some presenting today. So I'd like to introduce you to Bernard, those of you that haven't met him before. Bernard comes from a different background again for us. He does have some accounting knowledge, but a really interesting take on a lot of our stuff, which is nice to get things seen from a slightly different angle. And today he's got some ideas around the business potential tools. So it'll be really, really nice to see how that's doing and how we can look at that slightly differently as well. And obviously, if you haven't got business potential, simple stuff that works is the other tool that we can use, which is just much more long-winded. So it's much harder to have that same impact. So just bear that in mind if you haven't got the advisory tools at the moment. Look at what listen to what that Bernard's saying and see how you can apply it to simple stuff that works as well, because that's the similar type of tool. Oh, Bernard, people are saying hello to you. That's nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Bernard. I'm going to make him the spotlight for everybody, and I'll mute myself. And Bernard, if you'd like to take over.
Thank you very much, Emma. So I'm Bernard Keavy. So hello, everybody. What I wanted to talk about today was a way of generating extra earnings, extra profit for your clients, but a really good way of presenting it and getting them interested in getting advice from you and using one of the AVN software tools to actually accomplish this. So I've put some slides together and then I'll actually show you how the actual tool itself works, if that's okay. So just to get the right bit. So hopefully you can all see my screen. Everyone see that okay? So if you follow this through, I'm going to show you a way that could typically add 40% or more to a typical client's bottom line. And it's a really simple concept. And once you've got the concept, the tool makes it really simple to illustrate how it works. So what we're looking at is what I like to call the 5 + 5 + 5 + 5 formula. And the way it works, it's really simple. If we know our price, our average price, and we know our volume of sales, then obviously that tells us our revenue. And if we know our cost of goods sold, all of this obviously is on the accounts, then we'll know our gross profit. And if we know what our overheads are, our fixed costs, then obviously we'll then know what our operating or our net profit is. And those are the 4 key numbers: price, volume, cost of goods sold, variable cost, and fixed costs. And if you could make a very small improvement in those 4 asterisk numbers, now this would typically apply to any client. Some clients don't have much in the way of variable costs. So, you know, obviously you've got to be flexible, but the concept holds. But if you could make sort of small 5% increases in each of those 4 key numbers, then it's just amazing how much difference it makes to the actual bottom line profit. So here, all I've done is I've said, could we work out a way to increase our average price from 100 to say 105? And could we work out a way to increase our volume from 2,000 to 2,100? And if we did, our revenue would go up to 220,000 instead of 200. And then could we look at systems, efficiencies, dealings with suppliers, stock levels, whatever? Could we work out ways to reduce our variable costs by 5% from 60 to 57, and even look at overheads and utilities and all that sort of thing, and see if we could get our fixed costs down by 5% as well? And if we could, then that's basically what happens. We go from 40,000 here, bottom line, to 62,800. Hang on, there's a slide missing there, which is, I think, I don't know, is it there? Oh, well, okay. I worked out the percentage of that, now I can't find it, but it's a lot. It's about 50-something%. The slide will probably turn up in the wrong order. So the question then is, how could you actually show your clients that this could work and show them the actual numbers and then persuade them that you could actually help them achieve these sort of results? And what you could do is you could use one of the AVN software tools called Business Potential. And it's really simple to use. So all you do is you go into the main home screen and you just put in the name of the business, you put in the sales figure, the cost of sales figure, the overheads. That will tell you the net profit per the accounts. And then you put in a figure here, which is really, it's a reflection of what the owner could expect to earn if they were doing this sort of role, you know, for a third party company. So it won't be just what they've taken out as salary or bonus or dividend. It would be what they should really be paying themselves. And once you've got that information in, you can then go to this button called the potential. And if we go there, what this now allows us to do is to play around with some of the numbers and show the impact of making some small improvements. So for example, we can actually take our prices here and show the effect of raising our prices by 5%, which is one of the key variables. And we can show the effect of increasing our volume by 5%. Now you can achieve more volume in loads of ways. You can have more customers, you could get them to buy more often, you could get them to buy bigger amounts when they buy from you. But just to keep it simple, if I just put in 5% in any of those boxes, it will show the effect of 5% more volume. So I put in 5% there. So straight away, what we've seen is just being able to increase our average prices by 5% and our volume by 5% would actually add 50,000 to our profit. However, there'll be more cost of sales because we've increased our volume. So the actual effect here comes to about 37,000, which is on the next page. Does that make sense to everyone? Anyone got any questions? Or let me know if there's any sort of questions, Emma. Yeah. Okay, so now the next page then summarizes that information. So what it now shows is that we started off with 500,000 sales, but because we've made a 5% increase in our average price and our volume, we now have 551,000. Our gross profit has therefore gone up to 236. So we've increased our gross profit by 36,250. And so far, I haven't done anything about the overheads or the cost of goods sold. So what you do is you log this figure, or you just save this screen. And this screen shows the effect just of making the increase in the average price and the volume. Now what you could do is you could then go back to the input data again. Oh, sorry, there's a graph that shows the figures numerically as well. And there's a report, which I'll come on to. There's an 11-page report, which I'll come on to as well. So now what we do is we go back to inputting the data and we put the same information in, except that what we'll now do is we'll reduce the cost of sales by 5%. So we'll put in 285,000 and we'll reduce the overheads by 5% to 95,000. And straight away, we can see that's added another 20,000 to our net profit, which is, yeah, that's a starting point. And now what we'll do is we'll go through the same exercise again. We'll add 5% to our average price here and 5% to our volume just by increasing the number of customers by 5%. And now what we end up with is when we come to the summary, we now end up with our starting profit was 0 originally, if you remember, on the first screenshot that we took, and it's now 57,000. Or put another way, it was 100,000 before the owner paid themselves, and it's now 157,000 before the owner pays themselves. So what we've done is we've shown the client how, by making 4 simple improvements of 5% in our average price, our volume, cost of goods sold and our overheads, we've taken the starting profit before they pay themselves from what was 100,000 to now what's 157,000, which is that 57% increase. And I would have thought that most clients who see you produce that information in front of them, I mean, what are they going to say? They're going to say, well, that sounds really good. How do you do it? How would you actually get those numbers? Now, I've been thinking about this. One idea that might be worth considering, whether you've thought of it or not, is maybe inviting some of your better clients in for a working lunch. And as part of the working lunch, maybe go through this sort of presentation with them and show them the sort of results that you'd be able to get for them. So that's worth considering. Any questions so far? Or So moving on, so there's the graph. Now, as I mentioned, there's also a report. If you click on this print report button, there's an 11-page report, and the 11-page report is a Word document, so you can edit it. And in there, it goes through some ideas. So 4 sets of sort of programs, if you like, that you could use with your clients to actually show them how to get these results. So any feedback so far, or everyone happy so far? So now what I thought would be...
They were just saying that, Keir was saying that obviously some costs will increase. And that's, yeah. And I've just said that, yeah, that's why in the software there's a field, isn't there, for putting in additional costs, which it's like could be your fee, something like that.
Yeah, okay, going back. So what's actually happened is automatically, as you increase your volume, the cost of sales goes up. So, but that isn't, anything to do with trying to make savings. That's just because of extra volume. You've then got the issue, obviously, depending on what scale you are. If you go beyond a certain scale, then you might have to upscale. So you might have to employ someone else, or you might have to, buy more machinery or more equipment, etc. But assuming that we're sort of within the same sort of scale as we are at the moment, then you could ignore that. Obviously, if you move to a higher scale, then you'd have to go back to your fixed overheads and sort of increase them again. But in simple terms, this is saying you're more or less staying the same size. You've just increased your prices slightly more volume. Your overheads haven't changed. Your cost of sales changes because of higher volume. Does that make sense? I'll take that as it does.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Okay. So now let's just have a look at this actual piece of software. Oh, hang on. I'll need to do another screen share, won't I? How do we do that?
Yeah, you need to stop your screen share,
right,
and then restart it.
New share. That's it. I think that's it. Yeah, right. Okay, so the actual software itself is really simple to use. When you load it, you just come into this screen here, put in the information, put in the cost of sales, whatever, put in your overheads. It'll tell you your net profit, and then the owner probably shouldn't be paying themselves 100,000 in this case. So let's say it's, and that's all the inputting there is really. Once you've done that, you then go on to the next screen, which shows the potential. So the potential is this screen here. And you could, enter in lots of information, but I think to keep it simple, to me, it just put in, you can alter this. So if you put in the 5% there, it'll crunch that number. And the simplest way to show more volume is just to increase one of these figures by 5%. So if I increase any of these, should get you the same result. So just increase that by 5%. And don't worry about increasing the gross profit percentage, because we're already automatically increasing that. When you increase your prices, it automatically increases your gross profit percentage. The only other way to do it then is to shade down on the costs, but I think it's simpler to do that the way I just showed you. So the next screen then is the summary, which is what we saw. And then the next screen shows a graph. And that's it really. And then once you've done that, just go back to the data entry and put in the figures again, but with reduced overheads and reduced costs of sales. Does that make sense, everyone? So the next question you might then get is, well, that's all very well, but how do I actually get those improvements? And so I've got some ideas there as well. So coming back into here, here's some basic economic theory now, which I think works quite well as a nice visual way of showing this. So if we looked at our average price, the first thing is a lot of people don't put their prices up and haven't done for years. and or two really. But even apart from that, you can increase your average price without necessarily even putting up your headline prices. And the way it works, hang on. The way it works is by just sort of some basic economic understanding. So what I've got here is, this is it's very simplistic, but this is a supply curve, which effectively says the higher the price, the more willing and able people are to sell. So you get more supplied. But the higher the price, the less willing people are to buy. So you get lower volume bought. And where they cross there, that is the market price, the sort of going rate, if you like. That's the price that you would charge if you're no different to anyone else. So the first way, obviously, to be able to charge a higher price is to be able to move the demand for your product or service out that way. And you do that by differentiating yourself. So that's why you hear people saying you need to target market, you need a niche, you need to be different to the others, you need to have to be able to come up with a message that indicates that you offer something that's preferable and better to your so-called competition. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is that I think this is really interesting, and very few people sort of really appreciate this. But if this, where they cross, is what's called the market price and the market quantity, what this sort of ignores, if you like, is that you could sell less quantity at a higher price. And what that means is that there are people over here who would have bought from you at a higher price and would still buy from you now at a higher price if they had that option. And the way you offer that option isn't necessarily putting up your headline price, although you could, but it's these other simple strategies. It's things like having 3 different levels of proposition. So gold, silver, bronze. So accountants could do this, lawyers could do this, anyone could do this, just have 3 different sort of levels of service. And what you probably find is maybe half of your clients or customers would probably go for the middle one, which immediately takes you at a higher price than this market equilibrium price. So that's one idea that you could easily help your clients with, just saying, why not look at the idea of having more than one proposition? Another idea, really simple, very few people do it, everyone should really, is have what's called an upsell and a cross-sell. So an upsell is a larger quantity, and a cross-sell is when you sell a related product. So shoes and shoe polish, laptops, laptop bags. Both of those will mean that you'll get a higher, well, basically you'll get a higher, either a higher price or a higher volume at the point of sale, which effectively is the same thing. And then another option is, instead of ever being tempted to compete on price, just add in extra value. So a simple example would be, you're a restaurant, say the average price of the meal is £20. Rather than discount 10% to make it £18, why not bundle in free dessert? Charge £1 more, the dessert might cost you 50p, and you'll be offering something to the customer that looks much better value than a discounted £18, but is something that's much more profitable to you. And again, that principle holds true for any business. So having different levels of packages of services, having upsells and cross-sells, and bundling in extra value, all of those things would enable you to increase your average price without necessarily even having to put up your headline prices, although you could do that as well. Does that make sense? Now,
that's a great description, Bernard. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Now there's more actually, because how would you get more volume? Well, I've got something really simple to show again on the diagram, but then there's other ideas. So higher volume, the first thing is going back to our supply and demand curve here. All this price here says is that at this price, this amount of people would buy. But what it also tells you is that if you had a lower price proposition, all these people over here would buy. So one way to get more volume is to have what's called a downsell. And what a downsell does is it's a lower value, lower price proposition, which is still at least as profitable. But the idea here is that you're now getting people to become customers. And once they're customers, it's 5 to 8 times cheaper and easier to market to them. And basically what happens is once they come in here at a downsell, you can then nurture them all the way up here until eventually they might end up here amongst your sort of gold clients or customers. But you've got them in here with your downsell. And the other thing that works is having proper follow-up campaigns. So again, I'm going to come on to this on the next screen, but a common mistake is that business owners don't really follow up properly on prospects. And if you did have systems in place, which AVN can obviously help you with, you can follow up much more effectively. And again, that will eventually increase your volume because you'll end up with more customers. Does all of that make sense? And then moving on, what else could you do to increase your volume? Well, some good ideas here, I think. The first thing is, I just alluded to this, but at any given time, most people aren't ready to buy now, particularly for accountants, particularly if you think about it, your prospective clients are more than likely, they've already got an accountant or they know an accountant. So for you to actually get them to come to you is actually more difficult than it is for a lot of people actually. But what happens is people will only eventually buy after multiple points of contact. And you can only have the multiple points of contact if you've got proper systems in place. And that's where you need this idea of the buyer's journey and follow-up systems. You know, it's called a drip campaign. But basically, it used to be said that buyers need to be asked at least 8 times before they buy. 80% of buyers buy that way. But it's probably a lot higher than that now because of multiple touch points, because of the internet, etc., etc. But unless you've got proper systems in place, you won't sell anywhere near as much volume as if you have got proper systems in place. So that's interesting because your clients are going to say, well, you can't do that for me, can you? And you're going to say, well, no, I can't, but I know someone who can. So this is where the whole idea of joint ventures with other, you know, suitable professionals would be of benefit to you. Because if you knew someone who was good at, you know, setting up follow-up campaigns, funnels, etc., and most of us know someone who talks about that, you know, within our network or within where we go networking, they could be really valuable to help you do this. This is another, it's the same idea really, but at any given time, if you took 100 prospects, 1 to 3 are ready to buy now, 67 to 69 of them, so the other rest of the 70 won't buy till some future date, and 30% will never buy. So the idea is that we need to market to the 70% here, rather than just the 3% here, which again is into this idea of, you know, having a lead magnet rather than, right, a lead magnet, that's called an informational offer. So a lead magnet is something that piques their interest, that they'll give you their contact details for, which then enables you to market to them and nurture them along the buyer's journey. Whereas an incentive offer is aimed at now buyers, you know, buy one, get one free, that sort of offer. So you need both. You need an informational type incentive offer, sorry, an informational type offer to get them to come into your buyer's journey with you. But at various stages, you need to have an incentive offer to try and ask them to buy. A lot of people don't have the lead magnet informational offer. And here's another big one, customer reactivation. It's called acres of diamonds if you read some of the marketing texts. But effectively, research indicates that of people who leave one supplier and go and shop elsewhere, 68% of the time, it's not because you've done anything wrong. It's simply because they've not felt sufficiently, what's the word, contacted. They've felt a bit neglected. So that's where the whole idea of newsletters comes in, regular contact comes in, but also this idea of customer reactivation. The idea being that what you do is you go through your records, you find people who dealt with you previously and haven't dealt with you for a while, and you contact them individually. You make them an offer which is too good to refuse with a deadline, and you tell them how much you've missed them. And basically, you'll find that a fair proportion of them will come back in and buy from you, and then you can start nurturing them again. And again, that's a really good way of getting your volume up, because it's much easier to do that than it is to constantly be finding new leads all the time. That makes sense? Other ideas, obviously having a referral policy in place, which is one of the things we always talk about in AVN. Having testimonials, which again, we always talk about early on in AVN. Joint ventures, again, I think this is big for accountants really, because you could form joint ventures with, do you know I talked about the 5% extra on variable costs and fixed costs? Well, every networking group I'm part of has people who specialize in cost reduction, and they would be great joint venture partners for, accountancy practices if you were offering the idea of the 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, because they would be, you might be able to call on them to help in terms of cost reduction if the clients are interested. Does that make sense? Yeah. And here's another idea, book the next meeting or purchase. So if you're a hairdresser, for example, rather than wait till someone comes back in 6 weeks, book them in for 4 weeks time, which obviously again would increase your turnover by a third. I was going to stop there and see if there's any sort of questions or any discussion points on that.
Now, I think this is actually a really good way of looking at it, because this is looking at it as well from what's helping our clients do all these things, but actually being able to explain it in a slightly different way. And everything you've touched on, there are so many resources in System Builder that the members can use to support that. So I think it's really nice to think about this, that the resources that we've got in System Builder to help you could also use for your clients. So I think it's about putting this learning in place yourself, but also then sharing it with other people as part of you helping them lift that 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 process. Thank you, Bernard.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the idea that maybe getting some of your better prospective clients who might be more interested in this sort of advisory work, maybe inviting them in and doing some sort of mini workshop might be a good way of doing that. Right, apart from that, I have got something else I could go on to, but did you say you wanted to do something as well, Emma, or do you want me to carry on?
Let's carry on, and then I've only actually got a minute of wanting to show something at the end.
Okay. All right, well, going on to how you can actually illustrate this visually, the idea of a break-even chart really works as well. So, for example, if you knew your fixed costs were 50,000, variable cost £10, total revenue £20 a unit, then there's a formula which basically tells you what the break-even point is, which is the fixed costs of 50,000 divided by the difference between these two numbers is called the contribution. So if you divide the 50,000 by the 10 you're making on everything you sell, that will tell you your break-even point. And your break-even point can then be shown on a chart, as I'm sure you've seen before. So the red line is variable costs or cost of goods sold, which start at 0 and go up in line with sales. There mightn't be many of them, but if they are, that's how they would look. Your fixed overheads are fixed, so they start at a certain amount and they're the same until you get to the stage where you have to upscale. So your total costs would be this green line, which is these two added together. And your revenue would be this other line here, which starts at 0 and goes up in line with sales. I thought I'd change the color of that, but I think I'll put a different slide in, but not to worry. But the idea is where the revenue exceeds the costs is your break-even point. And if you sell anything less than that amount, you lose money. And if you sell anything more than that amount, you make money. But what's lovely about this is that anything you can do to reduce this horizontal line here will reduce this cost line here. So it will cross at a lower break-even point. Anything you can do to make the revenue line go up more steeply will mean that you cross at a lower output and there's a bigger gap between them, so you make more profit. And anything that you can do to make your variable costs go up less steeply will again mean that the total costs cut the revenue at a lower output there and there's a bigger gap. So basically what you're doing is you're sort of widening the gap. So you can see that anything that will alter the variable costs, the fixed costs, or the revenue, or the volume. So the way you'd show more volume is just move out here. So there's your break-even point. So if you're here, you're making a profit. If you're here, you're making a bigger profit. So again, it's a really sort of simple visual way of showing how 4 key variables can make a huge difference to your profit and how you can help your clients achieve those four improvements. Any comments?
I was thinking actually this is I really like this, Bernard, because actually often as accountants we can get a bit tied up in accountancy speak and make them quite complex when we're talking about the accounts and how we can change the numbers and actually just focusing, like you said, on these 4 key numbers to begin with is a much easier in to have that conversation before we then drill down to more detail, which is then, you know, like I mentioned, using something like Simple Stuff That Works or whatever else. But this is a really good way of just opening the conversation, isn't it, for those that, and try and make it more understandable for those people who are not financially adept. It's not part of what they really want to do. So it's a good conversation to have.
What's really nice about this one is you can actually just draw this on a flip chart. You can actually show them on a flip chart and then say, look, all we have to do is make that one go up more steeply and that one go up more shallowly, and look at the difference. So, you know, it's really easy to show it. There's just a couple of other things I thought were worth mentioning that you may have seen them before, and I think Shane covered something similar in the Clarity workshop. But just going back to this whole area of pricing, and just to make sure that our clients are fully aware, the difference between charging 10% more and 10% less for a typical client is just huge. So what you've got here is, I think it's 5,000, I can't see. I don't know if I say anywhere, but basically this is based on 5,000 units of sales. So that's the price. This is the variable cost. So the gross profit on them is 6. So that's the gross profit, 30,000. The overheads are 10. So that's the bottom line net profit. So if our starting price was 10, our bottom line profit's 20,000. If we discount by 10%, we've still got £4 variable costs, but we now only make 5 on everything we sell. So our gross profit is now 25,000. We've still got 10,000 overheads. So our net profit has gone from 20,000 down to 15,000. On the other hand, if we can find a way to charge 10% more on average, we've still got the same variable costs for, we now make 7 on everything, so it's 35,000. We've still got 10,000 overheads. So we now make a bottom line or net profit of 25,000. So what that means is my PowerPoint won't move on. Oh, yes. Right, so what that means is the difference between discounting 10% and increasing our prices 10% is the difference between a 25% reduction in bottom line profit or a 25% increase. Or put another way, the difference between charging 9 and charging 10 is 33% more profit, and the difference between charging 9 and charging 11 is 67% more profit. So huge difference just by going 10% one way rather than the other. And you can do that with some of the strategies and ideas that we looked at earlier. I think that's me done, actually. If there's any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, there are some assumptions made. I think Tracy put some assumptions, but yes, I think we have to make some assumptions in these conversations. Rather, yes, there are lots of other ideas about pricing, and if you go into System Builder, obviously anything that we've discussed with you for pricing, increasing your prices, you can share with your clients, but there are some specific action resources as well about pricing. But as Bernard showed at the very beginning, even just showing business potential and explaining those little bits that you could do just by increasing the pricing, or Simple Stuff That Works and using the very first module of that first section on pricing, is a really good way of being able to show them that they need to raise prices rather than discount them, because it gives you that option. Brilliant.
I think
Would you like to stop sharing your screen so we can ask you any questions?
Yeah, hang on, how do I do that? Yeah.
So Michael's asked, is it possible that you would be willing to share your slides, Bernard?
Yeah, no problem.
No problem, right. So what we'll do is we'll get them set up for you as well.
Thanks, Bernard.
Right, there you go. Right.
Anybody else got any questions for Bernard? Lovely. So everyone's seeing the potential, Bernard, which is great, and seeing that this is a really good conversation to have. Anybody else got any other questions? Well, I'd like to say thank you, actually, because it's been a really great presentation, Bernard. It's things from a different angle than I would have done, which is lovely. I always like people to have a different way of looking at things, and another way of explaining it to clients. So I think that's really, really useful. I've only got one thing I wanted to share with everybody today, which is I know quite a lot of you that are on today have got entries in the Business Owner's Guide to the Best Accountants. And I wanted to just share my screen. So just very quickly, if you put business owners into System Builder, you should now, if you're in the book, you should have some extra resources come in. So we have a resource on marketing it, so making the best of the fact that you are featured in the guide. And also we have some logos that you can use on your websites, email footers or whatever else to promote the fact that you are featured. And this is a great, as we talk about, this is part of positioning you, isn't it? As somebody who's been identified as one of the better accountancy practices. So worth looking at those. There's some great things in the marketing, things to put in a blog that you can put out there, a LinkedIn post you can put in there, things you can put in your emails, just little things, because the book has gone to Amazon this week. So we're just waiting for them to finally approve it, and then it'll be available to do print on demand for anybody who wants copies for it. We will be sending out a printed copy to everybody who is in the book. And if you're not in the book, then please look at it. It's part of the becoming approved member. It doesn't cost anything. It's just that as part of being an approved member, you guarantee that you can deliver certain things. And some of that, is about fixed fees. Some of that is about being able to give them some improvement possibilities, which is using On Track, various things, so that anybody who sees this book, and we do send it out to business owners, and we do have it available as a download from a website that we have, then they can actually look up accountants in their area. And obviously they're going to hopefully pick an AVN accountant that's in the book. So if you haven't done it yet, please talk to your Practice Growth Expert. We do release it twice a year. So we get a printed version at this time of year, and then in 6 months' time, we'll do just an electronic version, which people can download. So it makes it available. But please have a look at these resources, have a look at the logos, see if you want to use them, give us some feedback. If there's anything else you want creating in order to promote the fact that you're featured in the book, please let us know. Susan and I am very happy to create resources for you, support you with doing that. So is there anything else, any questions for any of us today? Okay, so next week, under the new training program that we've got, as it's the 4th week of the month next week, it will be a software overview. So we will be looking at the AVN app, the dashboard, and just delving into different tools and answering any of your questions. So if there's anything specific you want to know about any of those foundation tools, the Practice Builder tools, then let us know. We're there to answer all your questions and support you with that. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bernard. It's been an absolute joy having you on today.
Thank you.
Be nice to have you back soon. And we will hopefully see some of you next week. But if not, it's the 1st and the 3rd Tuesdays is resources and training like we're doing now, and the 2nd and the 4th will be software overviews and answering your questions. Brilliant. Hope to see you soon. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bernard, if you don't mind sending me your slides, then I can make them available.
Okay, we'll do.
Thank you very much. Brilliant. Take care, everybody.
See you, Michal.